What's up, guys? This is Martin Rucker and Tommy Saunders with Making Mizzou, our new podcast. This show is designed to highlight people who have contributed to making Mizzou what it is today and feature current Tigers that are continuing to make Mizzou what it's going to be in the future.
And our goal with this podcast really was to connect the passion for Mizzou with the former players, fans, and everybody who loves Mizzou and who has made Mizzou what it is today. And so we're really excited to bring on new guests, current players, former players, and just really talk about the inner workings of Mizzou, why they love Mizzou, maybe some adversity, and really just thoughts and opinions on our biased opinions on Mizzou and what's going on in the program.
Biased out of us? Nah.
Great.
So you may have you guys may have heard there's a little bit of news going on at Mizzou, small little snippets that we just hired a new athletic director. And so Desiree Reed-Francois has been hired as the new athletic director for the University of Missouri. We've had two other athletic directors over the last 6 years, and previous before that, Mike Alden was here for 17 years. So hopefully Desiree will be able to right the ship, but we also figured that what better way to start our first podcast, our first show, than having the second longest tenured athletic director at the University of Missouri, Mike Alden, on as our guest. Mike Alden is a good friend of ours, and so we want to say up front, thank him for coming on the show. And here's the interview that we did with him. We hope you guys enjoy it. Thanks a lot, Mike, for joining us. We appreciate it. It's always a pleasure to get to talk to you, and you are the first guest on Making Mizzou, and so we really, really appreciate you blessing us with your presence. Tell us a little bit about what you're up to today.
Well, first of all, I appreciate the opportunity to be with Tommy and you, Martin, on the podcast and on your visit today, and I'm honored that I'm getting a chance to be the inaugural person. I'm right here in Columbia, Mo, so I'm in my living room right now talking to you. And Rocky and I are doing lots of stuff in the community and doing a lot of things around the state of Missouri, quite a bit, since we retired in 2015, right? So in the spring of 2015, we've been able to teach some classes at Mizzou. I enjoy doing that. We've done some international work in Southeast Asia, building some programs, which I think is really kind of cool for Mizzou and some other things that I like to do. And then I've done quite a bit of consulting work for other schools around the country, other ADs that actually, many of them that came from Mizzou that, I've gone in there and tried to help out a little bit and worked on a few campuses. So busy times, I think they say retired, but we're probably semi-retired, and we certainly got a lot of stuff going on, but enjoying it every day.
That's awesome. You seem like you don't like to let too much grass grow under your feet. You had stepped down from Mizzou in 2015 after 17 fantastic, successful years there at Mizzou. And then in 18, I believe it was, you took on a senior advisor role with Cleveland State and UMKC, and have recently done some work at Boise State as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of how you got into accepting those roles and with those athletic departments?
Well, thank you for asking that. When I first retired, so Martin and Tommy, I've been around for a long time, and we had success at Mizzou. You guys know that. I mean, everybody knows that, and not certainly just football, although that was really good, but across the board. And so what happens when you're around a long time, you have a certain level of success, and you meet a lot of people. Then you have people in the industry that might call you to be able to help out. So how this started was the president and the athletic director at Northwestern University called me to have me come in and do some things. And then the president and the AD at Kansas State asked me to do the same thing in Virginia Tech. And so what happened was those schools, as I was doing that, then they were talking to other schools. And so by word of mouth, what happened was these consulting opportunities would come up. So whether it was Cleveland State or Boise State or like you said, UMKC, or I've done work at New Mexico, Chicago State, Wright State in Dayton, and these other schools, it just kind of took on kind of a controlled life of its own. And what I mean by that is I enjoy doing this. I think the experiences we had at Mizzou, and then also some national experience, provided us with some skill sets that might be able to help some other schools. And frankly, guys, I can control my schedule, which I like. So I can determine I'm going to help out Boise State. But then when I get 3 other calls from 3 other schools, not to offend them, I'm going to say no. Or I might say, yeah, I'll go ahead and do all that. It just depends on, what I'm doing in my life at that time and everything. But that's a long story to tell you that it's been almost organically how it's been built. And it's great. It's a company. Our company we formed is called MRJ Advisors. And we've done a lot of work around the country. And I have a lot of other people that I bring in on different particular projects that help me do the work. And it's a lot of fun, very, very satisfying. And hopefully it's helpful for schools in the industry.
That's great, Mike. So have you helped any other schools hire a new AD? Are you coming in usually, at what point and stage are you coming in to help? Is it the AD's been there for a while? Are you helping hire? Kind of talk through that process.
How it started, Tommy, really was coming into a process where I knew the AD, I knew the president, and it was probably just a moment in time where they needed some help. Northwestern was, building an athletic complex. They were in the process. Well, we've done all that kind of stuff. So can you come in and take a look at it? But what happened was, as that morphed a little bit, evolved, more times than not now, I get called by presidents. And when I get called by a president, usually I'm called in to be able to either help an athletics director, help a president or the university, be able to kind of ascertain how their athletic program is doing financially, how it's doing facilities wise, competitive wise, or whatever that may be. Now, when that happens, sometimes then there might also be a transition with athletic directors. And so when that happens, then I'm usually there. I try to be there to be able to help presidents identify their next AD. So I've done that. Brandon Martin, who's at UMKC, I don't know if you guys have met him, but he is awesome, right? Dr. Yeah. Brandon Martin. So I helped UMKC with that. I helped Cleveland State with their AD. I just helped Boise State with their AD. But more times than not, I'm there to be able to help a program and a project and a president. I'm not a search firm. So I'm not a guy that goes out and a headhunter. It just happens that sometimes I'm able to help. And I've been fortunate to be able to do that at Louisiana. And like I said, UMKC, Cleveland State, Boise State, a few other schools.
Right.
So you've been able to help. Oh, go ahead, Tommy.
I was saying, what goes into that process as you're evaluating these ADs that they bring in? Getting into the weeds, you have, I think my biggest question is, people can interview really well at that level. They know all the right things to say. So what do you look at when you're evaluating these ADs to go really deeper into, to know if they're going to be the right fit for this school?
That's a great question. Because I think, I don't want to make it about me, Tommy, but this is where I think what I've been doing is different than what like a headhunter does. With me, because of the way that I approach it, I first get a chance to really ascertain the department, the program, the university, and the community. So I know in Cleveland, didn't know much about Cleveland before I came there, but I had a chance to know more about the institution, about the community, about the demographics, about what they're serving. So then when you do that, now all of a sudden you're starting to target what are the characteristics and skill sets, because they're different at Cleveland State, really, than they are at Mizzou, and they're different maybe at Boise State. And so what I'm able to do is be able to really, hopefully, provide advice not only to the president, but also, let's say, Tommy Saunders. So more times than not, I'm going to know who the candidates are. I'm going to know them either personally or I'm going to know people that know them. And so what we're trying to do is identify what are their skill sets? What do they bring to the table? What kind of personality do they have? What do they do on the job? What do they do off the job? How do they interact with other people? Do they have humility? Do they got too much hubris? I mean, what is it? Because I think that a lot of times search firms go out there and just find people that have a resume. And what I'm trying to do is help schools get way beyond the resume and be able to get more deeper into what do we have to offer, what do they have to offer, and how do we match up those skill sets with what's best for Mizzou or what's best for Virginia Tech or what's best for Louisiana or whatever, because they're just different in all these different places. But that's kind of how I do it. And probably why I don't get as many jobs is because I spend so much time doing that. Headhunters are just going to find this one and they're going to move on to another school and they're going to keep doing it. With me, I spend a lot of time to go really deep before we start identifying the candidates.
That's fantastic. And so, you spent a lot of time at Mizzou. You made a lot of quality and key hires there. And that is probably, arguably the biggest job of an athletic director besides fundraising, which you were also incredibly good at. I think the budget increased at Mizzou from 13 million to 85 million over your time there. And so what are the things that you look for in a head coach? What's probably the first thing you look for in a new head coach, and what's the most important thing that you feel that you need to get in a coach to lead a program?
Well, I'm gonna come at this from two ways. First of all, Martin, I think the number one thing that you should look for in a head coach or anyone that you work with is you have to understand their values and their integrity. Period. Not their wins and losses. You got to understand their values and their integrity. What are the characteristics and who are they as a person? I think the second thing you want to be able to look at is, and in particular at a place like Mizzou, I've got to be able to look at their work ethic. Because look, this is not Florida. We can't just roll out the ball and
right.
When all of a sudden recruits are coming, we're doing whatever, and we got an unlimited budget. So we've got to make sure that we identify people that know that they got to outwork the competition. So character, integrity, work ethic. I think someone that's able to show confidence with humility. Those kind of the characteristics are examples of what we try to identify. And finally, it's a lot like a recruit, right? So those 5 stars, that's great to be able to have that, and it looks good and all that other stuff. But really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to identify are who are those people that we could bring to Mizzou as student athletes that have these characteristics, with this type of work ethic, with this type of humility and team orientation, and how can they continue to develop and be able to overproduce for what we're trying to do at Mizzou. That's what we did in recruiting for student athletes. That's exactly what you should do with head coaches. And I think a lot of times ADs and particularly presidents, right? They get caught up in this, oh, look at how much pizzazz this person brings, or look what the media is saying about this person, or look at how many games they've won, or whatever. And they forget about, tell me about the integrity, tell me about the characteristics, tell me about the humility, tell me about the work ethic, all that stuff. And a lot of times you'll find that many hires go sideways, and you guys know that. And so at Mizzou, that's kind of what we were trying to apply, whether it was Brian Smith in wrestling, or Gary Pinkel, or Robin Pinchton, or maybe it was Quinn, maybe it was Mike Anderson. We can go on and on about all these people that came and did some great things at Mizzou, but that's pretty much how we tried to identify those candidates when you're hiring a head coach, assistant coach, custodian, whatever. How do we apply those characteristics?
Right. Mike, do you have any examples of how you have gone about that and what you've seen? So, I'm sure you're talking with, their previous school and their references, and you're interviewing them. Do you have any examples of like how you saw, a hire's work ethic or their integrity or their values? Like specifically, like, is it, hey, every single person I talked to, they said this about them? Kind of give me some of your secret sauce, if you say, of how you go about identifying some of those qualities.
Tommy, on those in particular, you got to make sure you're going off reference list. People always list the references. Well, holy cow, man! When I call those people, what are they going to say? They're going to say great things about Tommy Saunders.
Exactly, right.
What I want to be able to do is, and hopefully all of us either have a network or we're knowledgeable enough that we're gonna do different types of connections to find out. Let me take, Tommy Saunders, I hear he has this great work ethic. Really? Okay, I know all these people, the coach has said it, all these other people have said it. Well, maybe I have a way to connect with somebody that is actually either on his team or experienced something with him before or worked with him on a particular job, whatever that may be. And a lot of times when you're doing that, people are like, oh man, that's too much work. I'm going to go by with whatever the reference said. Reference said this guy is great. I'm okay. Well, I mean, did the reference share with you that, maybe they got an issue with their family, which could end up being a big issue on the job, right? Maybe they have an issue with their personal character, on things that they do off the job and things like that. So if you don't flush all that kind of stuff out, I think somebody told me this one time, I don't gamble, but what they told me is it's like throwing dice, right? what we're trying to do is we're trying to load those dice as much as we can. So hopefully they come up with a 7 or 11. I think that's the numbers we're looking for, and not coming up snake eyes or whatever. You got to do everything you can to handicap it. But it's a process, it's diligence, and it is a frickin' 24/7 nonstop doing those things you got to do. But when you do that, Tommy, as much as we had to do that, let's say with Gary Pinkel as an example, whatever was there, we got to do that the same thing when we're taking a look at Casey Hairston, right, an assistant trainer, before we bring him on. We got to do the same kind of stuff, because if you can do that throughout your organization, even though it doesn't take you as much time for Casey as it does for Gary, and the exposure isn't as high for Casey as it is for Gary, if you can apply that across the board, man, your chances for success as an organization just went up significantly if you're able to do that kind of stuff.
And so after the press conference, after you make the big splash hire and everybody's riding high, then it's time for the coach to produce. It's time for him to get results out of his team. It's time for him to start recruiting. What's the most important element, you think, in the AD coach relationship when things, especially when things aren't going right, as they often do at some point in the career? How do you keep that together? How do you keep it from splintering? I know in the early years with Coach Pinkel, and I know during our early years, it seemed like every year everyone wanted to put him on the hot seat, right? But you guys always had a relationship, a continuity. And to us and to the team, it never seemed like what the media was saying was true. And so what's the most important thing in keeping that relationship together when you're going through the tough times, the hard times?
Well, there's a number of things. First of all, I think it's the direct relationships, like you were talking about, those persons that you hire, and making sure that you don't have to be best friends. You just have to make sure that you have mutual respect, mutual communication, and frankly, honesty. I think that that's important so that you can always stay current on what's going on, and make sure that folks don't think there's another agenda. But on top of that, so especially in college athletics, the ability to build those relationships and beyond just that relationship with the coach, all right? Because you're bringing on this coach, you got all these people putting this faith in, like you or the institution, but really you and the coach, and all of a sudden things start going sideways, and you got some state senator from, wherever, Lamar, Missouri, trying to say, hey, what's going on here? We need to get rid of this guy. Or you got these people in St. Louis, or you got these people in wherever, Kansas City or Princeton, Mo, or whatever. You've got to make sure simultaneously, Martin and Tommy, that you're building relationships, not just Mike, but relationships with Mizzou, that all of a sudden when those people come out of a meeting in Princeton, Mo, they're saying, yeah, those guys aren't winning the way they're supposed to be winning right now. Gosh dang it. But you know what? We're seeing some progress. We got to give them an opportunity. And so many times people will go out, they'll make a hire, and they forget that they've got to make sure they're also educating and communicating to their communities on campus, to their communities around the state, to their teams, to other people. So there's a constant understanding of what's going on, what we're trying to do, whatever that may be. That's huge. So for Gary, let's use him as an example. You guys, look, man, he comes in whatever year, and we lose by whatever to Michigan State. I don't remember what that score was up in wherever we were, in East Lansing or something. And so after 2 or 3 years, people are wanting to run him out of town, right? They're wanting to fire him. And the reality at Mizzou got to where Mizzou was because of what Mizzou did, right? They always fired football coaches. They either changed ADs, they did whatever. The only constant we had at Mizzou was Norm Stewart, right? And what he'd done. Really, you can talk across the board. Yep. And so making sure that people knew that it wasn't, you can't keep repeating history, took a lot of effort and a lot of time. The most important thing is a relationship you have with your coach and the person you work with, but you also have to nurture those relationships so you can be able to help stem that constant churn when all of a sudden things start going bad. And that's what we tried to do here. And we were fortunate because it worked out pretty well.
Awesome.
Yeah, I'm getting flashbacks of like how many times I would hear you speak, from pep rallies to before games. I don't know. I just, as you're talking and I'm thinking back of how you kind of controlled the narrative between, fans and the state and what was going on with the athletic department. I mean, I remember going to pep rallies, Ruck. I know you went to a ton of them all over the state. Yeah, it's really interesting to think about managing those relationships that you have between the Mizzou fans and alumni and donors and the athletic department.
And Tommy, and it's not only at Mizzou, it's not only in the state of Missouri, because you'll see this other places around the country. But I'm only going to speak here at Missouri, right? In that, for us, our fan base, and they should expect to be able to hear from us, to be able to see us, to be able to touch us. Look, we're begging people to come up from Springfield to come to ball games or come up from the Boot Heel, whatever that may. Well, when was the last time we went down there and spent time with them and and heard, and not talk just about Mizzou, but maybe talked about whatever's happening in Greene County today or whatever's going on up in Kirksville, whatever that may be. And so for us at Mizzou, we felt, and that's why, and I appreciate you saying that, because I know you guys would hear this over and over, but we had to constantly beat that drum. For us to beat in the Big 12, for us to beat Oklahoma and Texas or whoever, or in the SEC, to beat all these other guys, look, man, we got to outwork them. We got to outsmart them. We got to out-team them. We got to out-unify them. We got to out-connect them. And we got to out-luck them to beat them. And you guys know that, because they're going to outspend us. They've got longer tradition and longer history of success. And so in order to be able to do that, man, you have got to be connected at multiple levels and making sure that you continue to have a presence and encouragement and an appreciation. And that's what we tried to do. And so I'm going to just digress one quick second, because I remember this, right? So I thought, okay, I'm going to, in a couple of guys you guys know. So Jimmy Jackson, William Moore, I'm going down to the Boot Heel to do whatever. And so, and those guys are flying me on a plane to go down there, which is great. Well, I could go down there by myself and go talk to people. Well, no, I'm going to put Jimmy on the plane with me. I'm going to put William on the plane. We're going to go to his school in Hayti. We're going to go to Caruthersville, and all that messaging we're going to communicate, just like I would do, Martin, what I've done with you, Tommy, I've done with you, and we've done with everyone. There's always a consistency and importance that you recognize. Our responsibility is to be present, to be visible, and to be connected with people around the state of Missouri. That's what we got to do to be successful.
And yeah, as Tommy was talking about that, I was just kind of thinking back, and the one thing that always stuck out to me was that whenever we would go to these different, Tiger Club rallies and different things like that, you were always there. It wasn't just a representative from the athletic department, like the athletic director was there. And so I know that showed importance, and it really made an impression upon me, not just then, but something that I've carried into my adult life. And I was reading doing a little bit of reading about you last night, just to try to find out something maybe that I didn't know. And I tell people all the time, you're one of my top 2 favorite people in Columbia, you and Gary Pinkel. And I just can't say enough about the impression that you left on my life. But I was reading a thing, and Larry Teese said you actually gave him the shirt off your back when he was working for you. He said you took him to your closet and you gave him 3 nicely pressed shirts because he didn't have any for something that he needed. And I thought, wow, that really does embody the Mike Alden that I know and the guy that I have grown to love. And so can you just talk, before we switch gears into the new AD that we've hired, can you just talk a little bit about where that comes from and, why you feel that way and the strong values that you hold and how you've been able to impression them upon everybody that you've come upon?
Well, I appreciate it. It makes me smile, because I know exactly what you were talking about there. And I think that probably the way I grew up, I grew up with a lot of different people when I was growing up, had custody of me, and my dad got custody of me when I was in 8th grade. And he was a finished his sophomore year in high school. Right? He's a blue collar guy, construction worker, really tough, all this other kind of stuff. But boy, his humility, his work ethic, his respect that he showed other people, and also I would see sometimes the lack of respect he would get because of maybe his income or his position or whatever, really made an impression on me. And I thought, I don't ever want to forget where I came from. I don't want to ever forget what I learned. And I wanted to remember how impressed I always was with my dad, who would respect everyone, no matter who it was, but also the type of impact it made on me when I saw how other people sometimes didn't respect him the same way. And I think that really kind of helped kind of form that. And then as I grew, and in particular, then when I met Rocky and married Rocky, and you guys know her, I mean, her balance for me and Jake's balance for me, my son, is awesome, right? Because you got to have a balancing wheels, because whether it's, we're winning a bunch of games and everybody's patting you on the back, or the other thing is, I don't know, we got a bunch of stuff going on and people are wanting to fire you. How do you have that balance wheel? I think that is another piece. And then the final one, which is probably the most important, we should flip it this way, is our faith, is my faith. So, I always figured, hey man, I control, I look at all this stuff I control. And it took me a while to learn I don't control anything, right? So
Right.
I'm just to make sure that I show humility, I show loving compassion, I'm tolerant with other people, show forgiveness, and that comes from a faith. So I think my dad and that upbringing, Rocky and Jake and my family balance wheel for me, and how important that is. And then most important is probably the faith. Yeah.
Awesome. It's a great
Yeah, I
message,
think that-
especially for the times today.
Yeah. One thing I would say before you switch topics, Ruck, is that the one thing that I remember and know about you still is that you were always present in every conversation. And I think that makes an impact whenever you're talking with student athletes. And for you, talking to hundreds of people every single day and going to football games, talking to thousands of people, it's every single time you're talking to somebody, you were present, you were there, you remember things about them. And I think that impacts the whole athletic department whenever you are there present with people, when you're speaking with them. It's just so easy to, be thinking about the next project or looking down the line of who else you're going to talk to. But it's one thing I always appreciated about you. And I think that that was one thing that rang throughout the athletic department when you were there, and definitely connected. And we saw the coaching staff move towards that after AO passing. It seemed like it really, as I look back in hindsight, I think that really stemmed from you and how you carried yourself with the program. So thank you. Yeah.
Well, thanks for mentioning that. I think people ask me, Tommy, what I miss the most out of being the athletic director. And I always tell people there's three things. Number one, it's our kids. For you guys, I always called you guys my kids, right? So, but that's everyone, because it was our student athletes. And just whether I was walking through the weight room or in the training room, or we were at some event, I was at a game, practice, meeting parents, all that stuff. I think the second thing really is that relationships that we had, not only with our coaches, but, Rex Sharp and his staff, Tammy Chivas and Maggard and all those guys in academics, and, Melagrito and Kenny Agee and Donnie in the dining facility, or whoever. I miss that. And the third probably is what we talked about earlier. I loved going everywhere around the state, everywhere, right? And just seeing people and being in the moment with them. And you're right. It's challenging, Tommy, when you try to be in conversation with somebody and their eyes are looking over your shoulder. It's kind of like they're waiting to go to the next thing. And I thought it was really important to me that you were always intentional, and it comes from a good place and a pure heart. And I credit a lot of that to my dad, and when I grew up, and just him always reminding me that no matter who you're with, you always want to make sure you're focused and locked in on and the attention that you want to give them. So thanks for noticing that.
Now I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about Desiree Reed-Francois. Yeah. Can you tell us a little bit about her? Do you know her very much? Do you know of her a lot? Just kind of give us your initial impression.
I do. So her first name, Desiree, and Reed-Francois. I've known her for a long time. And how I got connected with Desiree was I was doing a kind of a professional development session with a few other ADs, like AD from Ohio State, a friend of mine named Gene Smith, guys up at Notre Dame, the Debbie Yow at North Carolina State, whoever all these people are, I'm dropping names. There were like 50 up and coming people that were there. And so one of those 50 that were there was Desiree Reed-Francois. And so, her name sticks out to you initially, right? So you're going, okay, I can kind of remember that name. But I remember her, and she was very, very impressive. She's very personable. and she is really smart. You're very knowledgeable about things. And what I'd heard was that she was a pretty hard worker. So I met her at this deal. And then she got hired by a guy that used to work for us at the Mizzou. So this guy named Whit Babcock is the current athletic director at Virginia Tech. He hired Desiree as his number 2 person. And so he worked for Whit, who worked for us at Mizzou, kind of knew how we operated things here. And so I got to know her more and more and more that way, and have watched her career elevate and what she's done at UNLV. And so I know her well. Her husband, Josh, she's got a boy named Jackson. And so I think they're a good unit. And I know she is a really hard worker. And I know she's very excited to be the next AD here at Mizzou.
What do you think will be the biggest challenge for her that she'll be facing right off the bat here at Mizzou?
Well, I think there's a few. I think that first of all, she's going to have one of the big challenges is that she doesn't have a lot of relationships with people in the department. I think her jump start is really Konzo. So Konzo and her work together at Tennessee, so she knows Konzo Martin really well, and I think that's very helpful. So I think her first immediate thing is to be able to get a chance to know everyone within the athletic program. And Martin and Tommy, that can't be just like sitting down and saying, hello, this is my name. Understanding that's a lot of work. I think the second piece of this is going to be, how do you connect who we are and what our culture is and what kind of culture we're going to continue to develop with people around the state, right? Especially in this environment that we're in and in lots of things around the state. How does she do that? I think she's going to have to understand, how am I going to be able to enhance my external operations area? What I mean by that is we are doing a good job generating monies for Mizzou athletics. But let me tell you, especially with UT and OU coming in this league, it just went to a whole different level. So how are we going to put together a plan like that? And then the final thing is, I think her biggest challenges initially are going to be, you got to put together your leadership team. So be like Gary coming here. We'll use Gary because we're talking, you guys obviously played for him and worked with him. But when he comes here, well, he's got to surround himself with a team. Well, he brought his staff with him, right? Most of them. He inherited Andy, kept Andy on staff, and then did all this other stuff, got Nut involved, and then Nut becomes, director of ops and all this stuff. Well, Desiree has to do that here. She's going to inherit some people. That's fine. But the question is, are they part of her leadership team or not? Are they going to adapt to what our expectations are or not? And who's she going to recruit in here? Those are some of the top things, right? I think that she has to address right away. And it won't happen overnight. That's got to be a constant thing for her first 6 to 12 months on the job.
So I think those things, some of those things seem like what you do at any school, right? What specifically about Mizzou that are the great things about Mizzou and the challenging things that she's going to face specifically about Mizzou? Because, I think Mizzou is really unique, and we've seen that since you've left, the ADs that have, been there for short periods. So what does she need to do? What advice would you have that treating this different than, another school?
Okay. So I think that what the positive part is, that what I would tell her, Tommy, is I think there is, as there is in a lot of places, but there's a unique passion for the Tigers, I think, in the state of Missouri. And frankly, I think we have drifted, I'm not saying whatever, we've drifted away from connecting that passion around the state towards what we're trying to do at the University of Missouri. And we have a fan base that is really strong, and they really want to support the Tigers, but we have a fan base that needs to be reminded of who we are and how much we appreciate them, whatever. So when you're in Alabama, Auburn fans, whether they see the head football coach or not, or whatever that is, they're still going to be passionate. They're still going to come to Auburn games or whatever. At Missouri, I think we have to constantly be reconnecting with people and channeling their passion towards what we're trying to do. So I would tell her a great thing about Mizzou is the passion of our fan base. And I think on the other side of this, the biggest challenge is I think we've drifted from connecting that passion like we would see. Look, it doesn't just about playing Kansas in Arrowhead. Let's be honest, right? So that was a unique time. That's fine. But the reality is, everywhere you went in this state, people know about who we are, what we were doing, what we were trying to accomplish, how we were trying to do it. And you could hear them. They would say that, whether it was, we're Mizzou made and this is what this means, or whether this is what we're doing in softball, or this is what we're doing in basketball. And I think that we haven't paid as much attention to that over the last 4 or 5 years. And I think, to me, that's probably the biggest challenge. Here's the strength, and here's the biggest challenge.
And I imagine that probably ties right into my next question, but you obviously had massive success in fundraising here at Mizzou, and she's had pretty good success as well fundraising at UNLV. What do you think is going to be the key to her being able to continue and increase the fundraising effort here at Mizzou to keep up with UT and Oklahoma coming into the league?
You got to build relationships. Mm-hmm. You got to be trustworthy, right? You got to be trustworthy. You got to build relationships. You got to be trustworthy, and you have to be able to communicate a user-friendly vision. Those are the things that she is going to have to be able to do, and that will take time. It took us time to build relationships with, these people giving us this amount of money, or these people doing all of this, because they don't just trust you because you came in, you got this title called athletic director, and you're making all this money, or whatever you are, and you got this thing. People have to be able to know who you are as a person. They got to build relationships with you. They got to trust you. So you got to be trustworthy. And then finally, they have to be able to buy into this common vision that we have. And I think for Desiree, what is the vision that Eli Drinkwitz has? What does Konzo have? What does Larissa Anderson in softball have? And how do we be able to wrap our hands around the commonalities of that? So she's building the case for supporting what we're doing. She's building relationships. She's trustworthy, and she's communicating a vision, and she's seeing things through Eli's eyes, Konzo's eyes, Robin Pinchton's eyes, Larissa's eyes, whoever. I think that's a key, because the money's not going to rain and not going to fall in there just because of, hey, we got to have it. You got to make sure that you are building a relationship. You are trustworthy. You can't just say, trust me. You got to be trustworthy. And then you got to be able to share a user-friendly vision. Tommy Saunders, I got to give you the sound bite. I can't go into all the things about why this indoor facility in the South End is so important and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I can't, because I'll lose you, right? But what if I can be able to communicate Eli's vision as a servant to him, right? As a servant leader to him and to all of our coaches and our student athletes, that's the key to success. And I think that's what Desiree will have to do over the course of time. It won't just happen overnight. It's going to take several years to be able to build that.
Awesome. Tommy, you got anything else?
No, I think that is, as a somebody who's very passionate about marketing, I think that is key. People can only remember one concept. That's a fundamental of marketing. And so I agree with you. And I think that being able to, as an athletic director, you're stepping into this position, you have your goals and how you have your vision, but incorporating that vision from all the major sports and all the sports and coaches and bringing those together. And that only comes through communication and building a real relationship. And so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out and how she goes about building those relationships.
And Tommy, I think what you were saying is so true. It's that marketing component, right? All of us only have an ability to be able to retain so much stuff.
Right.
And so we have to make sure, so that when we tell people, hey, we're Mizzou made. Okay. What does that mean? And you guys may remember this. Rocky laughs at me because they got sick of hearing this all the time. We would always talk about academic integrity, social responsibility, and competitive excellence. So every single person, whether that was Chelsea Thomas in softball, or Martin Rucker here, or Kim English there, or Tommy Saunders there, or Nikki Tholen soccer, whoever all of you guys are, right? Our coaches, everybody was able to say, hey, we're Mizzou made, and this is what it means to be Mizzou made. I can remember that stuff. And then what I loved about this, Tommy, what I loved about it is we had our faculty council, our deans, our chancellor, our president, our curators. Everybody was able to say the same thing, but it took time. And I think with Desiree and her leadership and the opportunities that are there, are we able to describe that? How are we able to build relationships? How are we able to be trustworthy to earn that trust? And how can we communicate that vision in a marketing way so it's something that can be memorable and we can replicate that? That's going to be really important.
And I don't know if you know this, but that is really why this podcast started. It's called Making Mizzou, and we wanted to connect and bring that passion from the fans to the players to everybody who helped make Mizzou. And it's an active process of the people, the alumni, former players, current players, and talk about Mizzou, give their thoughts on it, and really, have an entertainment for people to watch and let other people know that we are passionate about Mizzou. There's diehard Mizzou fans across the state, across the nation, and we want to just have people come on and talk about how passionate about Mizzou they are, and give people insights of stories and concepts that they haven't heard. And I know we thank you so much for jumping on the podcast. And this is exactly what I think me and Ruck envisioned when we want to come up with the show, is to have conversations like this and give people insight into behind the scenes of what goes on and how it's a lot of work and to bring that passion out of Mizzou and highlight some of the major contributors to that.
Thank you, Tommy, and certainly I applaud both of you guys for developing this and certainly putting together a platform and a vehicle that can be able to hopefully continue to connect, like you said, that passion for who we are and what we're trying to do with messaging that can continue to elevate not just Mizzou athletics, but the entire university. And, I said this to you guys before, and I mean this, and you hear this from me a lot. I'm so proud of you guys and many others, right? And just to see, what you've done, not only at Mizzou, but certainly beyond the university, in your professional lives, in your personal lives. And so to be able to sit back and to be able to watch that and to be able to see that it's really humbling and it's really satisfying. And again, I'm so proud of both of you guys, and what you're doing is I think a pretty special deal. So
thank you very much.
Thanks.
We really appreciate you coming on the show. It's been awesome to hear you talk about how the sausage was made a little bit and explain a little bit about yourself and why you do things the way you do. And we're all excited for the new AD, but we still got all the love in our heart for our old AD.
Well,
Mike
thank you.
Alden.
He's getting older. So all right.
Thanks a lot, Mike. Have a great rest of your
thanks,
day.
Mike. See you.
All right, go Tigers. Thank you, guys.
MIZ.
We owe you.
Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. We want to say a big thank you to our sponsor, 360 Vodka, for bringing you the show. And now Tommy's going to tell you what you're going to hear from us next.
Next week, we're going to go over Mizzou schedule, the roster, some key players, who's been doing well in camp, and then we're going to dive deep into the NIL and how paying collegiate athletes is going to affect college sports and specifically Mizzou football this season.
Look forward to seeing you guys next week. MIZ.
CLU.